Americans for Fair Taxation presents the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, president of Americans for Fair Taxation, and recorded by Bob Paxton, a volunteer with the Florida FAIRtax Educational Association. And now, this week's Chairman's Report.
Hello, I'm Bob Paxton with the AFFT Chairman's Report for Friday, September 20th, 2019. Making taxpayers help pay for their bad deeds and not caring if we know. Although we were very fortunate that our daughter never had a problem with drugs, many of our friends' children did have drug problems. Tens of thousands of dollars were spent sending these young people for treatment, but many could not tolerate the pain associated with drug withdrawal and returned to using drugs. In 2006, my wife and I moved to Florida for the purpose of helping start Novus Medical Detox, a medical detox center to help people withdraw less painfully from drugs and then allow them to move to treatment programs if needed. We learned that many of the people coming in to be detoxed were addicted to Oxycontin, prescribed by doctors and produced by Purdue Pharma. Purdue Pharma sales representatives were telling doctors that their drug was not really addictive and that it was safe to prescribe for a variety of treatments. Of course, that was a blatant lie. Oxycontin is molecularly almost the same as heroin and is more accurately described as a pharmaceutical-grade substitute for heroin. In fact, the only people who came to detox addicted to heroin explained that they started on Oxycontin but switched to heroin because it was less expensive and easier to obtain. Now, Purdue Pharma is a privately owned company owned by the Sackler family. The multiple investigations and lawsuits regarding Oxycontin are revealing that not only did the Sackler family know that Oxycontin was being widely abused and was creating the same addiction as heroin, but they were working to sell even more Oxycontin and find a way to hide the billions of dollars in profit their criminal drug was producing for them. Opioid lawsuit settlements appear aimed at giving tax breaks to drug firms, experts say. That's the title of an article written by Kevin McCoy that was published online by USA Today. Mr. McCoy pointed out that the $270 million settlement with Purdue Pharma announced by Oklahoma Attorney General Mike Hunter is, quoting now, just the latest chapter in a saga where U.S. corporations trim their tax bills by writing lawsuit settlements off on their taxes. The article also noted that although the 2017 tax bill made it more difficult, it appears that Purdue will pay a foundation and that other bad actors were careful to label their settlements as restitution, thus making them tax deductible. Of course, these corporate deductions reduce the taxes these corporations would otherwise pay and effectively passes along a substantial portion of the cost of these settlements to each one of us. Of course, the ability to use the income payroll tax system to pass much of the cost of their bad deeds on to the rest of us is not limited to the recent drug case settlements. Mr. McCoy also pointed out that J.P. Morgan Chase was able to deduct almost one-half of their $13 billion settlement for their issuance of the toxic mortgages that helped start the 2008 financial crisis. He also noted a 2015 report calculated that the 10 largest company settlements with federal agencies between 2012 and 2014 totaled nearly $80 billion, and that the payers were able to deduct at least $48 billion of that, more than half the total. So there's yet another reason to scrap the income payroll tax system. Well, why doesn't Congress stop these outrages? Well, they tried in 2017, but these bad actors used other provisions in the income tax code to accomplish the same result that Congress tried to prohibit. The reason is that prohibiting deductibility of settlements for problems created either by the gross negligence of a company or actual bad acts, as was the case with Purdue, this requires some proof of these bad acts. And if an afflicted party is offered an amount of money that they believe is acceptable in a settlement, they almost always are willing to let the payer say anything they want to in the settlement agreement. They don't have to admit fault, and they're allowed to claim that the money being paid is not a penalty or a fine, statements that would disqualify tax deductibility. Trying to fix the present Internal Revenue Code is like pushing into a balloon. You make an impression where you push, but it bulges out on the other side. In conclusion, the swamp loves the attention being paid to the abuses by Purdue Pharma and its use of the income tax code to reduce their costs and make the rest of us pay part of their settlements for their actions. Again, these are actions which the Sackler family knew were literally killing people by the tens of thousands and ruining countless lives. Now, the swamp knows that when people demand that Congress prevent such abuses, corporations will line up to give them money to protect this tax benefit. Then in turn, they can reward members of Congress by purchasing their fundraising tickets and making campaign donations. The swamp is amoral about things like this. They have no problem at all representing the interest of bad actors as long as those bad actors pay them enough money. They have no problem harming us as long as they get paid. Hopefully, if enough people point out their hypocrisy, at least some members of Congress and members of the swamp will have trouble sleeping and not enjoy the money they so immorally obtained. So you want to end this immoral and obnoxious system that fuels the swamp and many members of Congress? Then replace the failing income payroll tax system with the FAIRtax, the only truly fair tax.
This has been the Weekly Chairman's Report, written by Steve Hayes, President of Americans for Fair Taxation. Check back every week for news and information about the fair tax and learn why the fair tax should replace our antiquated federal income tax system. If you'd like to receive a copy of the Chairman's Report in your inbox every week, sign up at fairtax.org.